Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective. Hey there, everyone. Ray Flowers, FantasyGuru.com. Hope you're doing well here on this Monday. It's a holiday week. Not much is going to change this week over at FantasyGuru.com. I talked about it earlier last week on this show about how things might be changing. Looks like we're going to have a show every day this week. I think things are going to be a little bit different on Thursday. Probably only going to do a half-hour show on Thursday. It's Thanksgiving. Wanted to do something. Didn't want to abandon all of you. I think Justin Fensterman will be here on Wednesday. We'll be obviously here today. We'll be here tomorrow. We'll be here on Friday. So it looks like we'll be with you 5 days this week. We'll probably have a different schedule during the next holiday weekend or week, excuse me. But for this week, we're rocking and rolling with you at FantasyGuru.com and here on Fantasy Sports Daily. I am Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com, your host on Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays here on the show, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Justin Fensterman's here on Wednesdays. Why is that? Because he's good at this, and because I'm also on SiriusXM, Fantasy Sports Radio on Wednesdays with Jeff Mans on the Elite Sports Show, which is 3 to 6 Eastern, Monday through Friday. So I'm here 4 days a week. I'm there 1 day a week. Jeff's show is every day, whether I'm there or not. So you can listen to us here in the morning. You can download the show on your favorite podcast network. Just type in Fantasy Sports Daily. You can listen to us live and ask questions at Facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ. You can listen to us live and ask questions at YouTube@YouTube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork. You can go to FantasyGuru.com and just go to the Elite Plus tab at the top of the page and find things there as well. So many ways to get involved. You can ask questions, leave comments. We address those throughout the show. You can also head over to FantasyGuru.com. I might as well just throw it out here at the start before we even get involved. You see it on the screen there. Hey, it's week 12. We have one more game left in week 12. We're going to talk about, as we do every Monday, all the games. But before we get to that, just want to let everyone know we do still have that special. Go to FantasyGuru.com, click the click the subscribe tab in the top right corner of the page, and have at it. For $99 the rest of the way. The only thing you don't get in our football coverage is the Super Bowl betting guide. That's it. Everything else we do, you get for $99. You wanted to see what the DFS game is all about. You want to learn more about it. You want to have some success. Maybe your season-long team just hit the toilet yesterday. That's included in the package. You want to get involved in some wagering, place some bets, win some money, fatten your pocket. That's included in the package. You want help with your fantasy squad in the seasonal context. You want to sit down and take a look at our rankings, talk, have conversations in the Discord with our hosts. That's included in the package. So for $99, the rest of the way, minus that Super Bowl betting guide, you get everything throughout the playoffs for seasonal football, DFS football, and wagering football. Check it out over at FantasyGuru.com. What are we talking about today? It's a Monday, and this is the only day of the week of the 5 where we don't have a guest. Normally Tuesdays are Armando Masal. We talk waivers. Wednesdays is Rich Mileto with Justin Fensterman. Thursdays is myself and Tyler Beaker previewing Thursday Night Football. And then Fridays we talk with Russell Clay, kind of a grab bag of whatever it is we're talking about. He does our dynasty rankings over FG. He does college football. He obviously does seasonal as well. So that's how we run it. This week on Thursday, because it's a short show and because I'm trying to be a nice boss, Tyler Beaker won't be on the show Thursday, but he'll return next week. On Mondays, as we're going to do today, and you can see on the screen there, we go through every game. All I have here is what you're looking at on the screen. I have no notes. I haven't planned what I'm going to say. I pick out a player or a situation on each side of these games, and we just dive in and have a conversation about it, me and you. And so there it is. We'll go game by game. And remember, $99 the rest of the way gets you that package for the rest of the season. All right, let's get into it. Let's start with Patrick Mahomes, Jonathan Brooks, and the Chiefs barely defeating the Panthers 30-27. When the Panthers tied this game up late, did you really think the Chiefs weren't going to win? I mean, you knew they were going to win, right? Yeah, Patrick Mahomes had a 33-yard run, put him in position for a field goal. They won the game 30-27. Barely moving to 10-1. The Panthers actually put up a really good fight in this one, and they fell to 3-8. On the one side of things, I mean, you can't say we told you so with Patrick Mahomes because his performance to date has not been there. Based upon expectations, absolutely has not been there. He has 10 touchdown passes in 4 games now. He ran for 60 yards yesterday. He had 269 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions yesterday. He had a great game. And it was so out of nowhere for some people that I even had a buffoon on social media accusing me of telling him to play Bo Nix over Mahomes and blaming me for him losing, which I then screenshotted where I told him Patrick Mahomes. So we even have people lying about this situation. trying to give themselves coverage because they didn't play Patrick Mahomes. We've said it all along at fantasyguru.com. I've said it here on the show. I don't have Patrick Mahomes because I chose Josh Allen over Patrick Mahomes in all my leagues this year when I had the opportunity. Okay. But we've said it all along. If you have Patrick Mahomes, just keep rolling him out there. And yesterday was an example of why that's the case. We didn't expect it to be the barn burner it was. There was some concern about whether the Chiefs would grind this game out. They couldn't grind the game out because of the way it went. And in the end, Mahomes had 3 touchdown passes, and he ran for 60 yards. And he's another one of these quarterbacks that's, getting you 30 yards on the ground each week, which doesn't sound like much. But remember, 30 yards is either 60 or 75 passing yards in your setup for the majority of leagues, or maybe it's 80. No, what am I saying? I got it right the first time, right? It's a significant advantage on the passing side of things. Significant. 30 yards is, 3 points. Do you get 1 point for 20 yards or 1 point for 25? Right? So it's like instead of throwing for 370, it's like he threw, or 270, it's like he threw for 350 if he does that. When he runs for 60, it's like he threw for 375 or 400. So using his legs continuing to be something he does, and it continues to bolster his value. On the other side of things, and this is kind of a warning shot for all the Pacheco people, because a lot of people were planning on Pacheco last week, panicked about Kareem Hunt. Now, Kareem Hunt didn't do anything yesterday, but he had 19 touches. People are thinking as Pacheco's like the savior. Look what happened with Jonathan Brooks. We waited all this frickin' time for Jonathan Brooks, waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And he was healthy and he was good to go. And then they still waited another week to play him. He played 5 snaps yesterday. I mean, I think Dave Canales knows what he's doing. They put up a great effort yesterday. So what their plan was worked. They almost defeated the Chiefs. But I just don't get this. 5 snaps. Not 5 touches for Jonathan Brooks. 5 snaps. 5. We waited 3/4 of the season for 5 snaps. So if you started Brooks yesterday, which I think in a lot of scenarios people were forced to as a flex option, I know there were some people that I said start Brooks. Sorry. Obviously didn't think they'd have him active and play him 5 snaps since they've waited 4 months to have him active. That's what they did. This further cements. Luckily, we did have Chuba Hubbard 21 at running back, and though he didn't really do much, he did get in the end zone, so he paid off. Luckily, we had him well ahead of Brooks, but they paid the big money to Hubbard, and at least for one day yesterday, to say Brooks wasn't part of the offense is an understatement. Now the question, I've already got it this morning, do we drop Jonathan Brooks? All depends on your team. If you have Hubbard, no. If you don't have Hubbard, there's no difference between Jonathan Brooks and any other backup that you got. I mean, they have Blackshear's the other running back who had, I think, 2 snaps. Really don't think that Brooks wouldn't see a significant increase if something were to happen to Hubbard. So it is what it is. But 5 snaps. Be careful with those guys coming back off injury, folks. Minnesota lost. No, they won. Whoo! Did they barely pull this one out against the Bears, 30-27. Bears were in position to win yet another game that they didn't. The Vikings had to take it to overtime and win there. Heading into overtime, Justin Jefferson had 1 catch. 1. And it got much better in overtime because he doubled that. He finished the game with 2 catches for 27 yards. Now, he's a really interesting case because so many high-end wide receivers have gotten hurt, and there's been a ton of them. Justin Jefferson is still a top, 3 wide receiver in terms of fantasy points? I'm pulling up here as we're talking. He is, as of right now, wide receiver 4. And again, all these scoring systems are a little different, but wide receiver 4. He was drafted around that. So he's paying off on expectations. He was a first-round pick for most leagues, but a lot of times he was falling to the 6th, 7th, 8th pick, something like that. So he's about where you drafted him to be. Now, the problem with that is that even though that's the case, it feels light. I mean, Malik Neighbors is averaging the same amount of points a game. Cooper Kupp is averaging 3 more points a game. I'm going down the list here. Nico Collins, 3 more points a game. There's a lot of players that, if they had played more game action, would force Jefferson down the list. And the real problem for Jefferson is there's no ceiling games here. I mean, it's 6 for 80 every week, except for yesterday. It's 6 for 80 every week, but the big time 120s and 2s and the 10 catch game, they're just not happening. And, Darnold was a little bit beat up yesterday. He missed some time with that ankle foot issue he was dealing with. Nick Mullins only threw 1 pass. And, in the end, Darnold threw for 330 and 2, and they won a football game. But Justin Jefferson had 5 targets. I don't care if you rolled double coverage over to Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison stepped up, had a huge game, 8, 162, and 1. he was Justin Jefferson and Jefferson was Addison. So you got to look at it and consider it kind of a one-off. Doesn't help anybody if they lost their matchup because of it. But I heard a lot of commentators after the game last night talking about it, and they're right. And I say this, we have this conversation, you and I, all the time. If you have a Justin Jefferson on your team, this can't happen. And we'll talk, CeeDee Lamb's got a horrible quarterback and an offense doesn't work. He still gets 10 targets a week. 5 targets for Justin Jefferson in an overtime game. Just can't happen. And whether you want to blame Darnold or the play callers, it just can't happen. And it's happened a couple times this year. And again, there's just no ceiling here in this offense for the Vikings, despite them moving to 9-2. On the other side of things, the Bears fell to 4-7. They lost another game. Caleb Williams, late in the game, took our absolutely horrendous, brutal, mind-numbing sack, where he ran around for like 6-7 seconds, and I got sacked. You've got to get the ball out. Now, the interesting thing for Williams is he did get the ball out for the majority of the game. And it's not just about the 340 and 2. The numbers are really good. He handled the blitz very well. His performance while under pressure yesterday against the Vikings, which is a good defense, was very good. So he put up big numbers against the Vikings and handled the pressure, minus that one play, very well. When you look at it, he really spread the ball around. 10 targets to Adunye, 10 to Kmet, 15 to Keenan Allen, and 7 to DJ Moore. Moore, by the way, led the team with 106 yards and a touchdown. So Caleb Williams, there's still a couple of plays where you go, what are you doing? But he's a rookie. He put his team in position to win. He put up a good fantasy effort. He also ran for 33 yards. He is definitely rounding into form here. They were talking about on the broadcast, he doesn't have that signature win yet, which again, he's a rookie. He's played 11 games. But he is performing much better than he was a month ago. The change at OC has helped. Williams is back into that streaming conversation because as a quarterback 2, super flex, not in the quarterback 1 zone. But I don't know of anyone that was confident that he'd have a good game yesterday against the Vikings. And statistically and visually, he actually did. He's playing pretty good. Tennessee defeats the Texans 32-27, and this one was a shocker. Tony Pollard had another game where he was leaned on heavily. Tajay Spears out yet again with the head injury. Joe Chestnut had 2 touches. It was all Pollard all the time. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's the first time in Pollard's career where he's had 5 runs in a game of at least 10 yards. Ran for 119 yards and a touchdown. Caught 3 passes. He did it again. He was the engine that drove the offense. The concern with Pollard is something that we've shared a lot. Now, you didn't see it yesterday. Yes, again, he performed well statistically, and he looked good. He had burst. He was sharp. Found the holes. 27 more touches. And for a guy that during his time with the Cowboys wore down with 14 touches a game, so we're really getting into it now. The calendar's about ready to flip to December. We're approaching here. Thanksgiving. By the way, get your holiday decorations up. Thanksgiving's late this year. We're getting tight with Pollard. To date, the concerns have been completely overblown. We continue to list him as a running back 2. He continues to produce as a running back 2. And continues to give great value for those people that drafted him. He was taken as a running back 2, and he's probably running back 1 right now. Let's take a look after yesterday's game action. Let me verify that as we're talking. But he was drafted, I don't know what, running back 20, something like that. And if you look at his performance to date, he is, where are you, Mr. Pollard, 21 overall. So he's been exactly what he was expected to be. He's had some huge games too. And of late, he's really taken over this backfield. Be nice to see him get a little bit of a breather for him. On the other side of things, Nico Collins last week lost, 700 yards and penalties, right? A couple of penalties, wiped out 2 catches. Yesterday had 5 catches for 92 yards and a touchdown. We had someone in Discord over at fantasyguru.com, yelling at the moon after the first couple of series when he hadn't done anything. And Jeff Mans kind of nicely said, can you let the game play out? And in the end, Nico Collins went 5 for 92 and 1. That's fantastic. Do that every week. You're an all-pro, right? Should have been better. He had a legal motion penalty where, was it Dell and Mixon? There was a receiver, and I don't remember what the receiver was for sure, and Mixon, who were both moving at the same time at the start of the play. So the play was called back. It was a 33-yard touchdown. So he should have had 6 catches for 125 and 2. He has helped reinvigorate the offense. CJ Stroud threw for 2 touchdowns, 247 yards, also was picked off twice. He's, they're 7-5 and in position to make the playoffs. And he spent a lot of this season, has Stroud without Collins and obviously without Stephon Diggs. But Stroud just he hasn't taken that step. He has not taken a step from last year. I think there's not just statistical reasons, but there's eyeball reasons to suggest there's been even a little bit of a step back. So for those of you that thought you had, the next Patrick Mahomes, we just haven't seen it. Not to say that Stroud can't be a top 10 quarterback the rest of the way this season or for the duration of his career, but it's less certain at this point than it was, let's say, 5 months ago. But Nico Collins has returned, and he's really helped the offense move the ball more effectively through the air. Detroit and Indianapolis, Detroit, unsurprisingly, moved to 10-1. They defeated the Colts 24-6. In this instance, we had Jahmyr Gibbs with 2 touchdowns on the ground. We had David Montgomery with a touchdown on the ground. And as a result, in a game that they didn't have to push things, in a game that they trailed right at the start on the field goal by Matt Gay, but then it was over. Jared Goff didn't have a touchdown pass. And that's going to happen. Oddly, he threw 36 passes, which is 8-10 more than we're used to seeing him throw out there when he's ripping off 230-3 or 302 efforts. But games like yesterday are going to happen for Goff with the success they have at running the football. Now, I have David Montgomery listed there, not because he scored a touchdown or anything like that, but because he hurt his shoulder. And this is something we have to monitor because remember, it's a short week. We got 3 games on Thursday, including the Lions. Anyone that got hurt yesterday with Thursday games, that's a big concern for all of them. David Montgomery, is he going to be active this coming weekend? I don't know. We saw yesterday with Gibbs, the team's not afraid to give him a heavy workload. He had 24 touches. Now, again, he has 24 touches heading into a short week too, right? So this is a situation to watch. We'll continue to monitor all week. This would be the ideal week for the Lions to have 2 backs that give them both the ball 15 times. Yesterday, they could have done it. Thursday, they do it. They feel much better about things. If they have to give it 23 times, 24 times again to Gibbs this coming Thursday after doing it yesterday on Sunday, so we'll see. But follow that situation with David Montgomery very closely. At least he got in the end zone, had 70 scrimmage yards before leaving that game. On the other side of things, Jonathan Taylor, I'll say this. I don't know what – I got like 7 or 8 questions yesterday. On Sunday mornings, I'm not on my Twitter account. On Sunday mornings, I'm not in Discord at FG. I'm on Twitter, X, at SiriusXM Fantasy from 10 to 1 Eastern. So if you have a question on Sunday, that's the only place I'm going to give an answer because that's the only place I'm going to see. I had like 7, 8 questions about, do I start Jonathan Taylor? And it's like, look, I don't understand a world where you don't. Now, remember, you can make the right decision and get a bad result. You can make the wrong decision and get a good result. That happens too. But the right decision, despite 11 carries for 35 yards yesterday for Taylor, the right decision is always start Jonathan Taylor. Always, period. Doesn't matter. Period, start. He's an auto start. You have him on your team. He's in your lineup. And I'll say it like this. If you have Jonathan Taylor on your team and you're questioning whether or not you should start Jonathan Taylor, don't ever take a running back in the first 3 rounds of a draft. Anthony Richardson, the quarterback, Anthony Richardson struggling as a passer was the way it was always going to be this season. None of that is different at all from what should have been expected. So if you drafted Jonathan Taylor, you drafted him to be the running back in this system, on this team, with this quarterback. Now, again, the real issue for Taylor is the offense has struggled yesterday, and for 2 weeks now, Richardson, who went 11 for 28 because he can't complete anything underneath, has crushed Taylor to the point where he's no longer part of the offense as a pass catcher. He didn't have a target yesterday. That's concerning. Now, again, I'm still starting Taylor. It's not, we'd really love to see him get 3 or 4 catches for 38 yards. Maybe that's not going to be. Maybe it's going to be 1880 and a 1 on the ground, and that's all we're going to get. But you're starting Jonathan Taylor regardless what we saw yesterday. Now, just a note, too, which saw it just before the show began. Josh Downs, who hurt a shoulder, he's already being called unlikely to play this week. What was the terminology used? Let's look it up real quickly. He's a long shot to play, according to Ian Rappaport. So it doesn't look like Josh Downs is going to play. It's going to make things for the Colts more difficult through the air, make them have to utilize Jonathan Taylor more. We'll continue to follow those storylines here on the short week. New England and Miami. Miami won this football game 34-15. Not a surprise. They moved to 5-6. The Patriots fall to 3-9. What was a surprise is how this happened. Starting out on the Patriots side of things, this was a good match. The Dolphins defense is not very good. They can be run on. They have one running back to the Patriots they count on as Rhamondre Stevenson. What the hell happened yesterday? Yesterday, Stevenson had 8 carries, and he had, one catch? No catches. 8 carries, no catches. He saw 2 targets. If you look at their snap counts, I think Gibson had more snaps. Let me pull this up real quickly as we're talking here. Yeah, Antonio Gibson played 1 more snap and ran 3 more routes. I mean, Stevenson was a running back 2 yesterday. It was the right call to start him yesterday. Much like Jonathan Taylor, though, it didn't work out. Am I nervous about Stevenson next time out? Slightly. Do I think that Antonio Gibson's taking over this backfield after not being part of this offense really for 3 months? No. But yesterday was just weird. And teams think they see something, or maybe they believe there's a matchup. The Patriots are 3-9. Let's be honest about this. They're just not good. They don't have the talent level. We don't even have to get to the coaching piece. They just don't have the talent level. And that was known before the season began. So this is not surprising. Completely disappointing, though, that Rhamondre Stevenson really, he had 8 touches. Gibson had 7, but they drew each other to a standstill in touches and in snaps. And just an FYI, Patriots, that ain't going to work. You got to get Stevenson more involved. If you aren't going to do that, you're not going to win any games. So I think Stevenson still has to be in the consideration for that running back 2, bottom level running back 2 option, or as a flex at worst. Gibson is still somebody I don't want to play. On the Miami side of things, Jaylen Waddle, finally. I have a black squirrel staring at me over there. Finally, for those people that don't know, we have a couple nut bars for the squirrels. They're about 10 feet out from my windows or my doors here in the office. I guess they're French doors. Black squirrel. Anyway, Jaylen Waddle, who has not been part of this offense for legitimately 2 months, had his second big game of the season. The first big game of the season was week 1. He was catching 3 passes every week for 42 yards, something like that. Yesterday, 8 for 144 and 1. And Jonnu Smith, 9 for 87 and 1. Is Tyreek Hill the third weapon in this offense now? He had 5 catches and 48 yards. Now, we can talk a lot about Justin Jefferson and say we're disappointed with Justin Jefferson. And, yes, he's living up to expectations, but there's not been those big games. There's a couple of holes in his offense and all that. Tyreek Hill is wide receiver 26. He's not player 26. He's wide receiver 26. He has fewer points than Ladd McConkey, who was drafted, 8 rounds, 10 rounds later? He has less points than Jawan Jennings, who wasn't drafted. Don't forget, Tyreek Hill was a second-round pick in most leagues. He's wide receiver 26. And, all Tua Tagovailoa does, and he had a great game statistically, 317 and 4. He's completing 70% of his passes every week. Okay, that's great. He goes back, we talked about this. He goes back, takes his drop, makes a read, throws it. Or maybe makes a read, throws it. Boom, it's out of his hand. They don't want him hit. They don't trust the offensive line. So all he does is he go back, makes a read, and dumps the ball into open space and hopes for one of his guys to run a crossing route and catch it. Tyreek Hill should be able to catch 8 or 9 passes doing that, even if it's 87 yards, right? Even if it's not over the top, even if it's not him going for 150 and these huge gainers that we're used to seeing from him. 6 targets, 20 targets to Waddle and Jonnu Smith. Second consecutive huge game for Jonnu Smith. Third time in 6 games, huge game for Jonnu Smith. And Tyreek Hill's just catching 5 passes for 48 yards. Offense is better. It's improving for the Dolphins. They put up the points. Don't forget, no one ran for 35 yards yesterday, so it's not like everything's fixed. But that receiving core, even with Jaylen Waddle, we talked about him here on the show. Russell Clay and I talked about him last Friday. What do you do with Jaylen Waddle in a dynasty league? This is a reminder that, we put a lot on these receivers, but, if the guy is not 32 and he's not all beat up physically, a lot of the problems are scheming and quarterback play and matchups too. Waddle with a huge one yesterday. Hopefully you didn't drop Jaylen Waddle, which I'm sure people did. I don't know how many people started him. What do we have him as wide receiver 30 last week? We had Jaylen Waddle as wide receiver. Where are you, Jaylen? Well, 31. So he was still a wide receiver 3. So hopefully you were able to start him. I know some of you have 5 top 20 guys. But Jaylen Waddle with a huge game there for the Dolphins. Tampa Bay 30-7 over the Giants. Giants fall to 2-9. Their season continues to spiral out of control. Daniel Jones will be signing with somebody this week after he was released. Tampa Bay improves to 5-7. Bucky Irving. let's talk about this. Everyone's fired up about Bucky Irving, and hell, they should be. He caught 6 passes. He had a rushing touchdown, and he produced 150 yards from scrimmage. He also broke like 6 tackles or something. He looked great, and the numbers were spectacular. Period. Spectacular. Now, here's the problem. Baker Mayfield had a rushing touchdown. Rachaad White had a rushing touchdown. Sean Tucker had a rushing touchdown. Everyone's like, I've seen already comment, oh, Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving has been the best running back on this team since week 1. We've all known it. We've talked about it. Okay, and even yesterday when he dominates with this huge effort, let's not forget that Rachaad White, had 13 touches, still got in the end zone as well. We talked last week about Sean Tucker and the team, really those season, we got to get him the ball. Well, they didn't get him the ball much. He only touched the ball 5 times. So did they really try to get him the football? This is the second time. Because remember, the head coach said they really need to get him the ball. They didn't. The OC said we really need to get him the ball, and they gave him 5 touches. But here's the problem with Tucker in respect to Bucky Irving. Tucker had a rushing touchdown yesterday, and he had a second opportunity at the goal line where he fumbled. So maybe that fumble will knock him out of the mix here. But Tucker had 2 carries from about the 1-yard line yesterday. So before you get all excited about Bucky Irving, again, he was one of 4 guys to score a rushing touchdown yesterday. Sean Tucker was the guy they apparently want to use at the goal line. Somehow or another, Rachaad White is scoring a rushing touchdown every week. So Irving absolutely is the best option with this team. He's been the best runner back with this team all week. But again, yesterday, even though Bucky Irving didn't touch it a lot, when you get multiple touches inside the 2-yard line, be cautious with just looking at Bucky Irving and thinking he's a league winner. He might be, but be cautious with that. On the other side of things, we had Tyrone Tracy, who had a fumble of his own. I think that's 2 fumbles in 2 games for him around the bye week. 9 carries for 42 yards. Those are good numbers. He caught 4 balls for 28 yards. He's very effective there. Unfortunately for him, there was the turnover. And as a result, Devin Singletary was utilized. He only had 2 carries for 3 yards, but he got a touchdown at the goal line. They involved Eric Gray, who played like 20 snaps more than anticipated. He had only 1 carry and 2 touches in the air, but still. Tracy is the running back 1 for this team. He's the guy you should start. Tons of questions yesterday about Tyrone Tracy. And my assumption is that, because I saw the questions, everyone has all these. There's people that have terrible teams. They're completely out of it in fantasy. There are people with spotty teams that are hanging around in fantasy. People are managing and mixing and matching each week. And then there's other teams which, through a series of waiver wire moves and trades, have created juggernauts. And a lot of people have Tyrone Tracy as like their 4th or 5th running back. And it's like, if you have him as your 4th or 5th running back, you're in great shape. One moment here. So if that's you, consider yourself lucky. Now, for the rest of us, especially if you're in a deeper league, is Tracy a comfortable running back too? Yeah. He's there. He's there in most weeks, including yesterday, top 20 running back. Didn't produce that way, again, because the fumble, if he had the touchdown, it would have looked a lot better. But don't give up on Tyrone Tracy. Maybe he's not a starter for everyone because of your team. But for a lot of us out there, he's a nice bridge player to give us some depth. Dallas and Washington was one of the wildest games in recent memory, not just of this season. There were 31 points scored in the last 4 minutes of this game. And, if you didn't see it, you see the 34-26 score for the Cowboys. Excuse me. And you think the Cowboys rolled in this one. They didn't. They had a return. Thomas had a kickoff return. They tried a second onside kick. Thomas returned it 43 yards for a touchdown with like 20 seconds left, 14 seconds left in the game to give them that 8-point victory. It was a 1-point game. And in fact, the Commanders scored. They needed an extra point to tie the game 27 apiece. They would have gone to overtime. And there was a bad snap. Looked like the holder got it in pretty good spot there, but Siebert missed the kick. So at the end, the Cowboys defeated the Commanders. Commanders fall to 7-5. On the Cowboys side of things, Rush performed better, 247-2. I mentioned the 10 catches, 67 yards for CeeDee Lamb. Had a bunch of CeeDee Lamb questions too. You're starting CeeDee Lamb, as we talked about last week. His average this season is like 18 points. Yesterday, he had 17 points. It's the same thing. Even with Cooper Rush the last 2 weeks, it's been the same thing. But the real story here is Rico Dowdle, who has taken over the backfield. Go Ted Schuster. 19 carries for 86 yards. And as a pass catcher, 3 for 12. There are no big games for Rico Dowdle. This offense is not great. They struggle to move the ball at times. Nicely for Dowdle, he's often catching 2, 3, 4 passes. He has gotten in the end zone multiple times as a pass catcher. But yesterday, as I noted, that's 22 touches. And though he only produced, 98 yards of offense, it's 22 touches and 98 yards of offense. If he got that touchdown, that's a huge game. If he gets the touchdown, he's basically Tony Pollard, right? So Dowdle, who we've struggled to really feel confident in, he's there. Dalvin Cook is not a thing. Ezekiel Elliott barely plays. He's barely on the field. He certainly doesn't touch the ball. So Rico Dowdle is, in that running back 2 zone the rest of the way. He just is by volume alone, if for no other reason. But just wanted to point it out. He's been better than everyone but Ted Schuster, I think, anticipated at FG. On the other side of things, Jeremy McNichols, why are we listing Jeremy McNichols? Did he do something? Did I miss it, Ray? No, he had 3 carries for 22 yards yesterday. Why are you listing it? Because the Commanders are in trouble in the backfield. They're playing on a short week this week, right? If I'm not losing my mind. And let me pull up the NFL schedule. That sounds right. It's early in the morning. Remember that, folks. What is it? It's 9:30 on the West Coast. Let's see. When did they play? They play this week. Washington, they're not playing early in the week. Or are they playing early in the week? Ray learned how to read a calendar. Commanders, where are you? Commanders, where are you? Commanders, where are you? There they are. They play Sunday. Okay. Jeez, Ray. They play the Titans. So they're not on the short week. But Austin Eckler returned the kick late, trying to give the team a spark there right at the end. They literally on their last kickoff with 15 seconds left in the game. And was running hard up the middle and got blasted on the kick. Blasted. Obviously suffered a head injury. They're calling he's in a concussion protocol. So it's not the first time he's had a head injury, and it's unclear what his status is for this week. Earlier in the game, Brian Robinson, I'm watching this, and everyone's probably seen it by now. He gets the leg underneath the defender, twisted up backwards. I thought he broke his ankle. I mean, that's what it looked like. I was amazed to see him walk off the field a few minutes later, and even more amazed to see him back in the game because it legitimately looked like it was over. Like it happened, and my initial reaction was it's over. Kind of played, didn't play, then kind of played, then didn't play, basically didn't play in the second half. So it's unclear if he's going to be available either. Jeremy McNichols might be the lead running back for a Commanders team that we have talked about an awful lot here on, well, not as much on this show as Jeff Mans has on the Elite Sports Show, again, Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 Eastern, Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. He's talked repeatedly about how good this offense is, how their offensive line is terrific, and whoever's running you want. It might be Jeremy McNichols 15-plus touches. I don't even know if they have another active running back on the roster because didn't they release, what's his face? They released recently. Yeah, they only have 3 active running backs on the roster, if I'm not mistaken. They'll have to make a move this week to add depth for sure. But they may be looking at a Raiders scenario where they're down to their backup running back as the lead guy. So a huge situation to watch throughout the week. If you're an early waiver wire person, Jeremy McNichols, definitely somebody. Let me make a note of that so we can talk to Armando Marsal about it tomorrow and get his thoughts. But Jeremy McNichols definitely should be on your radar as a potential pickup this week at the running back spot. Speaking of pickups at the running back spot, what the hell is going on here? Well, the Broncos moved to 7-5. They beat the Raiders 29-19. That was expected. Nothing surprising there. I mean, at this point, and I'll say it nicely. And first of all, mea culpa. I wasn't in on any Denver running back, but I did say all along, if you got Williams, get Estime. If you got Estime, get Williams. This team should be effective on the ground. All these kind of things. I made all those statements. And while you can say they were effective at times on the ground yesterday, the truth is, overall, they've been okay as a backfield group. And of late in particular, they've been dastardly in terms of the usage. And so I was wrong. Anyone I've told the last couple of weeks, we've guessed wrong on Estime. We guessed right on Estime for the workload that first week we had the 14 touches. Then we guessed wrong on Estime in week 2 because he was then all of a sudden, for some reason, removed from the offense as Javonte Williams surged. Then we go to yesterday, and it's Jaleel McLaughlin. So that's 3 straight weeks. It was Estime 2 weeks ago. Last week, it was Javonte Williams. This week is Jaleel McLaughlin. Screw you, Sean Payton. I mean, it's just not – there ain't nothing here. Jamal Williams yesterday had 10 touches for like 4 yards. Yeah, 10 touches for 4 yards. Estime had 5 touches. He's barely on the field. Jaleel McLaughlin led this team. Jaleel McLaughlin hasn't been hurt. Like, what's going on? Look at the snap counts. Willams, 38. Jaleel McLaughlin, 20. Estime, 5. So 2 weeks ago, Estime led this backfield in touches. The coach came out after the game and said, we got to keep giving the ball to this guy. He looks really good. And he played 5 snaps yesterday. Jaleel McLaughlin might have hurt his leg. There's some conflicting information there. He was hobbling a little bit during the game. You saw him on the sidelines with his helmet off, kind of, and so follow that. There would be some clarity if it was Willams and Estime, but still, just awful. And they're winning games, and Sean Payton, thanks. On the other side of things, the Raiders, we talked all the week about Ameer Abdullah and him being the best option if you had to make that pivot to the Raiders. I know I suggested Abdullah to multiple people yesterday as a start. He only ran for 28 yards, caught 5 balls for 37 yards and a touchdown. A very Austin Eckler-like effort, which is not surprising because he's very much a satellite running back, as we talked about last week. Abdullah played the highest snap share of his entire NFL career yesterday. It's like 90% of the snaps. Laube, who was on, we were talking about last week, didn't even have an offensive touch. He was utilizing the kick game. Sincere McCormick was the guy who actually led the team in rushing yards, the player that was elevated off the practice squad, 5 carries for 33 yards. The Raiders lost Gardner Minshew to a broken collarbone. It's unclear if Aiden O'Connell's going to be ready to play through his thumb issue this week. Desmond Ridder came in the game yesterday and played terrible football, as he lost a fumble. Desmond Ridder might be the quarterback of this team next week. Madison was out. Zamir White was out, like disaster. Bottom line is Ameer Abdullah yesterday got it done if you played him. And he gave you everything you possibly could have expected if you played him. I don't know who the running back's going to be in moving forward for this team. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be moving forward for it's just stay away. I mean, and you got to be concerned because Brock Bowers, the Broncos basically used Surtain on Bowers some yesterday. They bracketed coverage him and they let Jacoby Myers go wild. But now we have to worry even about Brock Bowers because he had 4 catches for 38 yards despite the 10 targets. Who's even throwing the football in this offense? So pat yourself on the back if you took the risk because you had to with Ameer Abdullah. Hopefully you didn't just choose to do it, right? It was like he was dicey. But he ended up being the guy, though, oddly, Sincere McCormick and not Dylan Laube was the guy who led the team in rushing. I don't really know. Speaking of rushing, the Niners fell 38-10 to the Packers. Packers moved 8-3. Niners fall to 5-6. Lots to say about this game. I'm a Niners fan from the Bay Area, born and raised, all that kind of stuff. Brock Purdy hurt his shoulder. There already are some reports concerning his availability in week 13. So they went with Brandon Allen yesterday. Brandon Allen was 199, 1-1 as a fantasy option. Whatever. Your super flex league, you had no choice. Gives you 13 points. Fine, whatever. He has a broken finger on his non-throwing hand, and there's a huge splint. And right at the start of the game when he's coming out, the announcers are talking about, he broke his finger in practice 2 weeks ago. Brandon Allen's never been on the injury report, if I'm not mistaken. And I've given the Niners a lot of coverage here because, it's like I feel like people unfairly bash the Niners for not being honest about player health when all the teams do it. But come on. Brandon Allen gets out there, he gets a snap, he drops the snap. Why? Because his finger's broken. He's got a big-ass splint on his finger. And the broadcast, again, is telling us this occurred weeks ago. I saw did anyone see a report? Let me know in the chat here. Anyone see a report on Brandon Allen's finger? I didn't see one. So I am assuming Brandon Allen would be the starter in week 13. Josh Dobbs is floating around. I'm assuming it would be Allen again this week. Allen played about as would expect in a game where the Niners got boat raced. The Packers smashed them. It was all Josh Jacobs. We'll talk about him in a second. But the bottom line is on the Niners side of things, Christian McCaffrey, he ain't it. And you can talk about Brandon Allen and Purdy, and that's a huge difference. But we're now 3 games into this McCaffrey, and it's not just the numbers aren't great. McCaffrey, 2.8 yards a carry yesterday, 3 catches for 37 yards, 14 touches for 68 yards of offense. He hasn't had an impressive game in 3. He hasn't looked great in 3. He doesn't appear to have – he has the same patience and same vision. That hasn't gone anywhere. But he just doesn't have the burst. And it's readily apparent. Yesterday, they needed him. And in the old days, Christian McCaffrey gets 24 touches yesterday, 120 yards, and a touchdown. They lose the game, but he still is a huge fantasy story. He did nothing. His long run was 9 yards. Did nothing. And again, the Niners were beaten in this game. Their offensive line was beat up. Trent Williams was out. So it's not all on McCaffrey. But next year, remember this. I know a lot of people aren't going to remember this, but next year, remember this. When everyone tells you player A, player B has to be the number one pick, and if you don't do it, you're stupid. Remember Christian McCaffrey. Because if you did what the universe said with McCaffrey, your team stinks. If you listen to us at fantasyguru.com, you got Ja'Marr Chase. So at least you did that. But just hasn't worked out for McCaffrey or the Niners. On the other side of things, Josh Jacobs set a record, I believe it was a record. I think he broke like 15 tackles yesterday, like legitimately. A record, next-gen record since 2016 or whatever, since it's officially been recorded for the most tackles broken. The Niners couldn't tackle anybody yesterday, and they certainly couldn't tackle Josh Jacobs, who's had to be removed from the game and taken to the locker room and given an IV because he was dehydrated. Still ran for 106 yards, still had 3 touchdowns, had a huge fantasy effort. He steamrolled the Niners. The Niners lost this game by 28 points. The Packers scored 38 points, and they had one guy with 30 receiving yards. Like the Niners were dust yesterday. And Josh Jacobs looked fantastic. 15 broken tackles in a game, 3 rushing touchdowns. Josh Jacobs. Now, speaking of a team and a player that didn't look fantastic, Arizona fell 16-6 to the to the Seahawks. The Seahawks moved to 6-5. The Cardinals fall to 6-5. Everyone's got the same record in the NFC, it seems. Look, Kyler Murray ain't it. I will say I was wrong yesterday about saying to start Kyler Murray. I will say for the 753rd time since he was drafted, Kyler Murray just ain't it. Did you see that interception yesterday? I didn't hear a lot of people talking about he threw an interception. It was a bad pass. Did you go watch the play of woo? As he's running to the right, woo! That's a pass that Frank makes on the local field after you just got out of your freshman, math class here, and you're playing on the parking lot, waiting for your parents to come pick you up at 3:15 in the afternoon in high school. Woo! And his body language, and it's just I just know. He is, in my opinion, a poor man's version of Tua Tagovailoa who can run. And again, at the end of the season, he's going to be quarterback 11 or quarterback 9. It's just going to happen because he runs and he threw for 285 yards yesterday. But I never watch Kyler Murray play and go, wow, I just don't. And it was another effort like that yesterday. He doesn't look, and it's not fair because I'm sure he cares. Just doesn't look like he cares. Just doesn't look like I don't know. This is the vibe I get. I don't know. On the other side of things, JSN is rolling, man. He's got the 3rd or 2nd most receiving yards in a 3-game period of any Seahawk player ever. I think the record was set by Steve Largent in 1984. I think he's got 367 yards, JSN, the last 3 games. 6 catches for 77 yards and a touchdown yesterday. Another big effort for him. Clearly, Tyler Lockett's days as a focal point of the offense are gone. That's not unexpected. That was what everyone was kind of anticipating happening in 2024. It's happened in a significant way. Lockett's getting like 3 targets anymore. He's really vanished. And there are still some games where he pops, right? But he's more likely to go 330 than he is to go 675. It's just where it is. JSN has really stepped in, and he's become a focal point of this offense. Now, I saw someone mentioning, I want to say it was in Discord. It might have been on Twitter X. And follow me in those places, Blue Sky, Instagram, at the Ray Flowers. I saw someone mention I'm really nervous about DK Metcalf with JSN. Metcalf yesterday, 4 catches for 59 yards. Much like the situation with Justin Jefferson, the Seahawks, in my opinion, have always struggled to get the ball to DK Metcalf like they should. And this is a new offensive coordinator. It's a new head coach. Same quarterback, though. But you would think that, I talked about Metcalf last week, 7 catches for 70 yards. You shouldn't be worried about Metcalf because of the growth of JSN. JSN has basically just taken over Tyler Lockett's old job in terms of workload and production. DK Metcalf, and I thought about this when I saw the question. I wish that we could just stand there, you and I, and anyone has this concern about DK Metcalf. I wish you and I could go out on the field and stand right in front of JSN and DK Metcalf standing next to each other. You would laugh. You would laugh at everyone that would say that little dude is more important or better than that bigger guy. DK Metcalf is one of the most physically imposing players in football, and JSN looks like he's the same size I was when I was in 9th grade. Not exaggerating. True story. I was 5'10", 180 when I was 14. True story. And DK Metcalf is 6'4", 240 and can jump over a building. I don't know why the Seahawks don't get him the ball more. Any game where he has 5 targets like yesterday, I think that's a mistake. They won the football game, so there's that, and they'll lean on that. Don't be concerned about DK Metcalf because of JSN. Again, DK Metcalf is a must start. Was a disappointing effort for him yesterday. And this is not to ding JSN. I'm just saying, let's not get confused here with those two guys. Finally, Philadelphia defeats the Rams 37-20. Everyone's talking about it as they should. Saquon Barkley, first guy since Julio Jones in 2016 to have over 300 yards from scrimmage in a game. He just banana pants, 255 yards and 2 touchdowns. He caught 4 balls for 47 yards. He was the entirety of the offense. He was phenomenal. He is leading people to fantasy championships. He did have, as we were talking about Pollard earlier, he had 30 touches last night. And remember, as much as we love Saquon Barkley, and as much as Barkley is a monster, all these kind of things, here are Saquon Barkley's games played in his career, right? Played 16 games as a rookie. Then it was 13 in year 2, 2 in year 3, 13 in year 4. Then he played a full complement of 16. Then 14 last year. No, wait. That's not right. 2022, there were, so he didn't. The only time in his career he's played all the games was his rookie season. 13-2, 13, 16 of 17, 14 of 17, and he's played all 11 games this year. He's a running back. It's not fair to say, he's injury prone. But the last time he played a full complement of snaps in terms of games was 2018. So, he's been fantastic and all those good stuff, but just let's hope he keeps healthy because he's been terrific. And there are people now who are starting to talk about him as a league MVP. He's been that level of good. And remember, his numbers are fantastic. And that's still with his quarterback having 10 rushing touchdowns. Like this, he could have 15 rushing touchdowns right now. Like he could be having one of those LaDainian Tomlinson, Priest Holmes, Sean Alexander type of seasons if it wasn't for the presence of Jalen Hurts at the goal line. And then finally, on the other side of things, Kyren Williams, 16 for 72 and a touchdown. That's about what we've grown to expect with him on the ground. Perfectly good, perfectly usable, perfectly acceptable, all those kind of things. What the hell has happened to him as a pass catcher? Like, what is going on? The problem is what's going on is Matthew Stafford has done what Matthew Stafford has always done, and that is focus on one receiver. But now, after all those years of really focusing on one guy, he's focusing on 2. And we saw this last year when Kupp and Puka Nacua were healthy. And we saw it again last night. 24 of the 36 targets, or 2/3, went to Nacua and Kupp. And they're sprinkling in Atwell and Demarcus Robinson is scoring touchdowns, even though he doesn't really do much. Tyler Johnson had a target. Parkinson was involved. So they're kind of spreading the ball around a little bit. But the fact is, it's so tight at the top. The Kyren Williams is not catching passes anymore. And running for 72 yards and a touchdown is fine. Right? We'll take that every week, sure. But if he's not getting in the end zone, and he's only running for 70 or 80 yards, and he's catching 0-1 passes, which is what's happening here of late. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it's something to ponder with Kyren Williams. You have to start Kyren Williams. I'm not saying not to start Kyren Williams. I anticipate him catching 2, 3, 4 passes a week. I still do. But in games like last night where they're playing catch-up, in a game that you would think game flow-wise would lead to more work for Williams. And remember, Blake Corum had 1 touch. There was no other running backs being utilized by the Rams. Just didn't happen. And that's a little bit of a concern with Kyren Williams moving forward. Remember, go to fantasyguru.com right now. Top right corner of the page. Click on it. Click on what? That subscribe tab. $99 the rest of the way. Seasonal football, DFS football, wagering football. All 3 of them for $99. Everything we have through the playoffs, except for the Super Bowl betting guide. Everything else to the playoffs. All the articles, all the live streams, the Discord for everything, the access to everything. $99 the rest of the way at fantasyguru.com. All right, let's look at some of the comments here before we shut this thing down. Doug says, happy morning. You too, Doug. Angelo, same thing. Angelo said his worst week. Neither of his teams have any shot of winning unless Herbert puts up 80 points. I think Herbert's going to have a really good game against the Ravens. But yeah, 80 points is a little high, as you know, Angelo. Good morning, Ray, says Henry. Happy Turkey Week. Who is this year's biggest fantasy turkey? Well, I mean, I don't like using injured guys. I don't think that's – I talked about earlier, Tyreek Hill. It's got to be in the conversation. You could say McCaffrey, but again, he's injured, so I don't – Tyreek Hill? Again, I would have never drafted Tyreek Hill. I've said it forever. I was wrong the last 2 years, so that's, I'm not saying, oh, look at me. But Tyreek Hill, just awful. These multi-team bye weeks have been brutal. Yeah, we've talked about that, Sean. We all wish it wasn't 2, 6, none, 6. Remember, there's none this week, and the next week there's 6 more. So just the way it worked out. I don't like it either. I don't know many people that do like it out. Sean was also hoping that Carolina would have won. Yeah, they almost did. But yeah, right? Angela said, I started Kyler over Mahomes. Yes, that's the way we had it in the rankings at fantasyguru.com. That sucks. I will say that we had Mahomes 6, and I think no one else had him inside their top 10. Most had him out. That's just the way you look around, right? So, I mean, we had him way higher than everyone else. It's just unfortunate. And I will say it this way too, Angelo, nicely. Why do you have Kyler Murray and Patrick Mahomes? I think and this is a problem that's come up a lot. We've seen people, they've got Hawkinson and Goddard. They've got Hawkinson and McBride. They've got McBride and Kelsey. I've got Kyler Murray and Patrick Mahomes. I've got Kyler Murray and Justin Herbert. I got Kyler Murray or Justin Herbert question. That exact one. Kyler Murray or Justin Herbert. 18 times. I counted them. 18 times either or for the quarterback spot. Why? Well, because Murray went on the bye week, so everyone picked up Herbert. Now coming back from the bye week, everyone has Murray and Herbert, who are both top 8 quarterbacks this week in our rankings, and they don't know who to play. Same thing with Murray and Mahomes. Choose one. It's the easiest way to avoid being ouch. But yeah, that was rough yesterday, even though, again, we were higher on Mahomes, I think, than pretty much everyone else. Sean said, I wish I had started Hubbard over JT. I get that, but again, that would have been a mistake. You shouldn't have done that. So starting Taylor was the right decision. The results just didn't match. That happens at times. Let's see here. David P. Morning, Ray. What do you think about why do you think they don't give DK Metcalf more targets and treat him like a number one? Well, I just broke that down without even knowing your question, David. So this question's from 45 minutes ago. Secondarily, I was offered Bijan for Gibbs. Would you do it? No. And remember, I said this a lot to people, and please, everyone, please do the following. Before you make a trade, make sure that you look at the schedule, okay? I think that that's a fair offer to accept, but as we just talked about with David Montgomery having the shoulder issue, do you want to trade out of the offense with the if you look at the matchups the rest of the way for what that is worth, weeks 15, 16, 17, Atlanta's on the road twice. Detroit will be on the road twice. They also have to face Buffalo, so that's a little bit more of a difficult threesome. Buffalo, Chicago, and the Niners. If the Niners can get healthy on defense, they're all kinds of beat up there. I don't think there's a huge advantage to be gained there in terms of the schedule. Would you take Bijan for Gibbs? When there's a challenge trade like this, which is just 1 for 1, and it's the same guy for the same guy, and you're just choosing, why are we making the trade? That's what a lot of Jeff Mann says this all the time. Rich Mileto says this all the time. What are we hoping? We're trading a running back 1 for running back 1. Are we really gaining anything? I'm not against it. You can take it. I mean, I'm not against it at all. And in fact, at the end of the day, you probably would take it. But at the same time, there's no reason for it. Gibbs is running back 4. Bijan's running back 5. I don't like playing the matchups defensively because there's weather that can be involved, number one, and injury. We saw this with the Niners. The Niners, they lost Nico on the defensive side of things, completely changes the defensive outlook. They lost Trent Williams on the offensive side of things, completely changes the offensive outlook. They lost Brock Purdy. All of a sudden, Christian McCaffrey, who you thought was going to be a top 5 running back every week, not even on the board yesterday. Same kind of thing here. So you can do it. It's fair. I just don't really, we're just moving pieces around. Angela, what happened to the Cowboys? They look like a real team. Glad you started Dowdle. He played a good effort. They played well. And I think that Commanders got some things to work on. That's the truth. I mean, the Commanders should have won that football game yesterday. And without that miraculous touchdown by Terry McLaurin late, they wouldn't have had a chance. I mean, that was terrible. And that will tell you, that was terrible defense. The Cowboys did what they could to lose that game. Let's be honest about that, right? That game should have gone to overtime with the Commanders playing off the high of an 88-yard, 86-yard touchdown for Terry McLaurin, head into overtime. They probably win that game. So, yeah, Cowboys played better, but they're still not very good. Let's see. We're going through Sean and Angelo Sean and Angelo, you guys are becoming buddies. I love seeing that. Love it. Lil J Money. Rest pick one. Don't like rest of the season questions. Mooney's beat up physically right now, so he's going to be third on this list. So the question comes down to Ridley or Moore. It's a difficult question to answer confidently because I think they're both in that same zone. I'm going to say Moore, Ridley, Mooney. Obviously, we've got Atlanta coming off the bye week. We'll get a lot more information there. But Mooney was beat up heading into the bye. Not certain where he's at physically. None of those teams are on bye in week 14, so we're good to go there. I'm looking at the schedule right now. That's Indianapolis, New England, Denver, Washington, Baltimore, and Houston. All those teams still have their bye coming up in week 14. So, that's how I'd go. I'd have them the way you wrote them down. Lil J Money. I think you got them ordered there in the proper way. Thanks for listening today, everybody. I really appreciate it. Got a lot to do today. For the most part, everything will remain the same this week at fantasyguru.com. The articles will still be out, all of that. My matchup piece will come out on Thursday before the game action. I'll be here with you on Thursday on Thanksgiving Turkey Day. I'm going to do, I think, like I said, probably a half-hour show, an abbreviated one, but we'll still do it. My By the Numbers piece, or my Coffee Corner piece, will be out on Friday. Behind the scenes, for those of you that are baseball fans, I've started the baseball guide for 2025. Already got about 8 articles written. I'm doing it on Fridays basically now. So here we go. The Angels signed Yusei Kikuchi for 3 years and $63 million. Angels spending money again. I don't know why anyone would want to go there, especially as a pitcher, because they seem to ruin all the pitchers. But Kikuchi signed there. If you missed that in the last 24 hours, if you go to fantasyguru.com right now and you go to the baseball section, you'll see a free article at the top. It's tracking all of the free agent signings. So you can just bookmark that page and have it with you the rest of the way. I don't have a target date for the baseball draft guide. Let's say a month from now, and probably expect January. I'll be ready in December, but we'll probably expect January for the release of the product. Go to fantasyguru.com right now. Click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. Get all the football stuff for $99 the rest of the way. We'll be back here tomorrow, myself and Armando Marsal. We'll talk a little bit of the waiver wire here. We'll continue to take your comments and questions as well. Thanks for watching. Tell a friend. Really appreciate it if you do. If you're traveling this weekend, be safe. As a backdrop, we're here on Fantasy Sports Daily and always there for you and with you at fantasyguru.com. I'm Ray Flowers. Thanks for watching or listening to, depending upon how you're consuming the product, Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com. We'll be back with you tomorrow, 12 o'clock Eastern, right here for Fantasy Sports Daily.